Alright guys, welcome back. It's gonna be a midday stream today. It is 1:48 p.m. But yeah, I don't really know what to say from the start of this. We're trying to finish off 1.7 today, and I mean, it's Tuesday today, so probably by Thursday if I can, I'll be on week 2, which will be pretty good, really good actually. But yeah. Hmm. I am looking at this and I do feel a bit bad. I'm very behind. I mean, like, I'm what? This is day 60, I think. So 60 days in, and I'm not through week 1, which is poor to say the least. But yeah. Yeah, well, I guess I'll stop whining. But I won't be taking any notes today actually because I'm still finishing off these flower things. So yeah. But yeah. Let's carry on with. Oh, actually, I mean, fuck it. We're not gonna finish this stream. I'm not gonna stop streaming today until I finish. Until I finish this. Like I'm being dead ass. I will not. I will not stop streaming until these have been done. So let's do it.
How many breaths are you taking per minute? And digestive system, microbiome diversity will measure this. Reproductive system is going to be measured by your sperm count. So if you're a man and your doctor wants to get a measurement of your of the effectiveness or the function of your reproductive organs, then they're going to measure your sperm count, right? And that's like a pretty straightforward test that a lot of people do. And so, not to get too inappropriate, but we're all adults here, right? We can all move on from that. But literally, God, I'm 26. How old am I? But anyway, my point here is that all of these things, all of these components, all of these things are inside of the body, and we can take a measurement of each system in the body by looking at one metric. And now there's more to it than this, but you get the point. Every big or little system in your body has a metric attached to it that will allow you to assess whether the system is functioning properly. All of these systems in your body must work. All of these systems must work for the body to work as a whole. If one of these systems stops working, then we die. Now, maybe not the reproductive system, but if your respiratory system's fucked or your nervous system's fucked, you're going to either suffer immeasurably or die, right? Now, you want to approach.
Hold up, let me go turn on my glue gun really quick.
Business the same way that a doctor would approach a patient with a health issue. So if you've got a problem in your business, if your business is not growing and it's not profitable, then you need to find out why. And the easiest way to find out why is to measure it. And so, this is why if you call up 911 or 999 and you ask for an ambulance and the person on the phone will ask you, is their heart beating? Are they breathing? Is this person actually alive? Is there any point in us even sending out an ambulance in the first place? It's kind of what they're asking you there. And, if yes, then they'll send out paramedics, and then the paramedics will, run some tests and find out what's wrong with this person. And the only way to find out what's wrong with someone is through tests. And so you have symptoms, like for example, you could have a really bad cough. So you'd go into your, doctor and they take your respiratory rate, they take your VO2 max, which is like a measurement of, how effective your lungs are at processing oxygen or something like that. I can't remember. And then they'll get measurements, right? Then if something's working or not. Now, the same thing is true in business. So your business is made up of systems, and the functioning of your business can be measured by one simple metric, which is how profitable this thing is, or really it's profitability slash, income. Like how much money are you actually making? Now, if we're measuring a consulting business, then we're looking at income and profit. So for example, a consulting business that's making $100,000 a month with a 70% profit margin is going to be better than a consulting business making $5,000 a month at a 15% profit margin. Like the functioning of that business number one is better than business number two. And so we measure the success of our businesses by profit and income. Now, if you're looking at a software business and like a portfolio company, you look at like market cap, and it gets weird and different, but just to keep it simple, we're using profit and income. The first thing you would do to see if a consulting business was successful is look at income and profit. Okay, and I'm just going to highlight this. So, this is really the first thing you do. Like if someone came to you and said, is Charlie's business successful? You would run that by the fact, how much money is he making and how much money is he keeping, right? And, depending on your perception of success, you probably would say yes. If you think $1 million a month and $500,000-600,000 a month is successful, then, you kind of get the point, right? So it's pretty straightforward. Like, you start with this primary variable. This is the vital. This is how we know, is our business successful or not? Is it profitable and is there income? Then our income and profitability, in the same way that our heart rate is going to be determined by these systems, because if your nervous system's screwed up, then your heart rate will be off. Same thing if your respiratory system's all messed up, your heart will be working faster, right? And so each system in your business can be measured and tracked by a metric. So your product system is measured by your refund rate. Your ad system, if you're running ads, which you won't be for a long time, but if eventually you do end up running ads in your business, then your ad system is measured by your return on ad spend, which means how much money do you make back if you spend $1. So like it's called ROAS. It's how you print money. You'll learn to do it in EasyGrow. Cold email is basically measured by appointment booking rate, and your sales system is measured by your sales conversion rate. Once again, in the same way that with your body, if one of these systems is out of whack in your body, then the body won't function properly and you'll really suffer or you'll die. In the same way that with your business, you've got all of these systems and there's like a dozen of them. It's not just these 4, there's lots more. And if one of these isn't functioning properly, then the business is going to suffer immeasurably or it's going to die. And so the point here I'm making is that the primary metric that we use to measure success is an amalgamate of all of the smaller metrics that we use to measure success at a smaller local level. And to measure if systems are performing, we use something called key performance indicators. So a key performance indicator is basically a standard that we set that helps us know if we're performing or not. Think of a KPI in the same way that those sailors would think about the North Star. Like, how do I know if I'm going in the right direction? Because if you don't have a key performance indicator, like how the hell do you know if you're healthy or not? Like, for example, they say that a healthy adult male should have a heart rate of roughly 60 to 70 beats per minute. So if you don't know this and you measure your heart rate and your heart rate is 125 beats per minute, you don't know that you're unhealthy. You don't know that your heart rate's abnormal. You need something to compare it to and contrast it against. And this is why, in science and stuff, with obesity and all of these problems that people have, it's like the only reason you know you're obese is because you're heavier than the average person. And to be fair, a lot of the average is definitely increased over time. But we have metrics like body mass index and other metrics to use to measure the effect of weight and how heavy someone is on their health. And so you can use those metrics and those measurements to determine where you should be. And for example, the KPI in your system, and I'm going to color these ones in because you know how much I like my color. The KPI of the system for your product in your business is a refund rate of less than 5%. So if your refund rate in your business is higher than 5%, then you are out of KPI, which means that you're doing something wrong. So KPI metrics are these are feedback mechanisms. They tell us what's going on, right? So if in your body, for example, if your bone density is really low, then that's a sign that your mineral uptake it just sucks. And if you go to an osteopath, which is a person that works with people who have shit bones, basically, it's probably not a nice way to put it, but someone who's got weak bones, they'll take the measurement, and if the KPI for bone density is +1 and you come in at -3, the only reason that osteopath knows that you're abnormal and that you need to fix it is because you're not where you should be because of what they know is healthy for everyone. Okay? So that's how we use key performance indicators. And whenever you're running experiments or trying to become successful and making tests and stuff like that, you must learn to look at this, like to look at these KPIs and to understand like what the hell are you actually aiming for. Because if you don't know what you're aiming for, then you're gonna miss because you're not even aiming for anything. So we're gonna also touch on asymmetry real quick. This is another mental model that is explained in Easy Grow in like a 4-hour video, 3-hour video. But anyway, so the thing is there are an infinite number of experiments that you could run at any given time. So the question becomes like, how do you know which ones to run and when, and how do you know what to focus on? Like this might be a question that you're thinking about right now. It's like, if there's like hundreds of variables in my business, how do I know what to work on? Well, what you need to learn to do is focus on things called asymmetries. So asymmetries are certain things in your business that if you work on...
Maybe I should be tracking more then, in terms of like, you know how I'm tracking like, I'm tracking like in like, how do I explain it? In terms of like business wise, I'm tracking like how much I stream for, like how long I do per day, right? But maybe I should be tracking like, I don't know, how many pages I read, how many, I don't know, how many podcasts I listen to or something. Maybe that will help me out. It's just a little theory.
Move the needle the most. So you'll hear me use this phrase a lot throughout the training, which is move the needle. And this basically means like, there are certain things in your business that will move you towards your goal if changed faster than other things. And this is called leverage. So leverage is basically defined as something getting you what you want. In this case, it's moving you towards your North Star goal. So certain actions in your business have more leverage than others. Like for example, you could spend 20 hours building a fancy website, or you could spend 20 hours of just making cold calls and booking appointments. Like doing the cold calling thing has way more leverage. Because if your goal is to make 100 grand, then you can spend 20 hours building a fancy website and make no money, or you can spend 20 hours doing cold calls and make like $30,000, right? Now, the latter is going to move you towards your goal more. It has more leverage. So in contrast, the website is asymmetrical. So by the way, about the website thing, we're going to give you website templates very shortly. So don't worry about the website thing and how to build a website. I'm going to just give you the templates nice and easy. But simply put, if you're wondering what to test and what experiments to run and what to focus on and when, it's as simple as basically isolating the biggest problem in the business and focusing on that. So you cannot improve the entire business at once. So your job is to find and isolate the one thing that, if fixed, is going to move you towards your goal the fastest, and you just focus on that. And you know, the asymmetry in your business is going to be found in appointment booking, sales, or value delivery. So you want to start by experimenting with and nailing appointment booking, because if you don't, like, when it comes to like figuring out what to test first, you always want to start by testing your appointment booking systems, because you can't run any sales experiments without appointments. And also, like, once you've got the appointment booking thing now, then you need to run sales experiments, because you can't run value delivery experiments without clients. So if you're wondering what to work on and what order to work on it in, and what to prioritize with your experimentation and your scientific exploration here, you start by nailing your appointment booking systems and getting those things down to a T. Then you nail the sales systems. The reason you don't try and nail the sales system before the appointment booking system is because you don't have any sales calls to practice on. Like, how do you know if your sales script works or not if you haven't got any sales calls? And it's the same thing with trying to nail your product. Like, you obviously want to build a great product from the outset, and I'm going to show you how to do this. But the thing is the only way you're going to get better at your product and make a better product is by having clients. And the only way you're going to get clients is by conducting sales calls. And the only way you're going to get sales calls is by getting appointments. So all of your attention should be focused at the source. You know, it's kind of like a river. Like, the river's not going to flow if the source is empty, right? So you experiment by getting appointments first, nail that, then you nail the sales thing, you nail that, then you nail the product thing. They obviously want to work on all three things consecutively, but if you haven't got any sales calls, then focus on getting sales calls. And if you haven't got any clients, then focus on getting sales calls. And if you haven't got client results, then focus on getting clients. Like, you know, you see what I mean? So at any given time in your business, there is one thing that you can experiment with and test that, if nailed, will push you 80% further towards your goal than anything else. Like, almost always, there's always going to be one thing. Now, you don't have a business yet, but once you do and it's up and running, you just always want to be looking for that one thing. Like, for example, for me right now, the asymmetrical thing that I can work on is this program. Like, this is why I'm spending like a year building this thing. because it's like, this is the biggest point of leverage for me, because right now in my business, I need more traffic to Easy Grow, which is why I've built this program. I keep mentioning Easy Grow, as you can tell. And so, the biggest problem I have right now with my business and getting past $1 million a month is I want to do it with extreme levels of profit, which means that I need to get organic traffic and find new ways to get warm leads in who trust me and know me, who want to buy. And so the easiest way for me to do that to in a sustainable way that is very profitable is to build this course and make it available to you so that you can go through it, get results, and then buy Easy Grow. That's my intention. And that's why I'm spending a whole year on this. I've isolated the one thing that moves me towards the goal I want the most, which is 30 million a year right now. And I've no doubt we'll get to 30 million a year in due course. And this program's a huge component of that happening. Without this program, we can make it happen, but it won't be as profitable. That's my goal, right? So now we can actually look at the scientific method. So I know that we've obviously brushed over what the scientific method is, and you kind of understand it in theory. We've got the 4 steps. But what I'm going to do now is just give you a real quick rundown of a sort of test experiment, so to speak, pun not intended, because you need to know how this works. Like, understanding the theory of all this stuff, it should be blowing your mind, and I'm hoping you now see the world in a different way. You might want to watch this video again a couple of times. But
I will be watching this again.
But how do we find these variables? Like, how do we actually run empirical tests and experiments and make this happen? Well, let me introduce you to the tool that made me a literal millionaire. So this is the scientific method, and this is the business edition. So anyone who's actually a scientist, like, maybe you can develop some level of appreciation for me extrapolating this into business, but this is how we do it from a business standpoint. And anytime you want to run an experiment or a test, or anytime something's wrong in your business and isn't working, I need you to come back to this video and I need you to use this process. And once again, I know I'm plugging it, but in Easy Grow, I go into this in way more detail. I'm just giving you the high level for now. So the scientific method is fucking badass. It put a man on the moon. It took a picture of a black hole in space. It invented modern day medicine and much more. If it can do all of these things, it can certainly get you to a point where you're successful in business. And I know it because I used it to do it. So we have the cycle where we start by formulating our hypothesis. Once again, we're transcending the 3 levels. It can be macro, micro, or micro, micro, right? We're testing the hypothesis, we're observing the results of the test, and then we're using the results of the test to iterate a new hypothesis to run the experiment again. And the scientific method is cyclical, which means that we rotate around this cycle by formulating new hypotheses, testing them, observing them, iterating them, trying the new one out, and testing again. And so in the formulate section, what we're doing here is we're defining the variables, and we're creating the version of our hypothesis. Then we test it. Basically, we're exposing the hypothesis to the market to test its effectiveness. Then we're observing results, which is basically gathering data and observing the effect of the variable combination. And then we're iterating the hypothesis. So we're observing the results and getting the data, and then we're using the data to iterate the new hypothesis to hopefully make it slightly better. So we're going to be using the cold calling system from the variable map for this example. So inside of the variable map of all the variables in the consulting business, spoiler alert, there's a lot more than this, but it obviously is simplified, right? We've got this section on cold calling. So we've got the level 2 variable of the cold call system. And inside of the cold call system, we've got these level 3 variables. So to clarify, and by the way, I've changed them out slightly for this example, just to keep it simpler, but you get my point. So to clarify, the scientific method is specifically used at a micro level where we are shuffling level 3 variables to find level 2 variables that work. When we are experimenting, we are typically experimenting with the smaller variables, and this is the level that we iterate at. The objective of an experiment is to find results for a level 2 variable that are within KPI. So for example, like the level 2 variable in this question is cold calling. And if we want to fix the cold calling system, we're going to dive into the level 3 variables and we're going to start experimenting with these. And by changing these, remember, we change this, then we change the thing above it, and then we change the thing above that. So here's the steps. So step 1 is to formulate the hypothesis, or at least like, basically the shell of the hypothesis. So I'm going to put chain. Formulate hypothesis chain. So what this means is we need to define, step 1.1 is define the key variables. So what are the variables that make up this system? There's going to be 2 to 4, no more than that. You don't really want more than 4, otherwise you get complex. You want to define the key variables. What are the things that really, really impact this system? So in this instance for cold calling, it's the gatekeeper process. the hook, and the pitch. These are the three things that we can play around with and change to change the cold calling system as a whole. The next step is to define the metrics and KPI. So what measurement are you actually going to use to determine if the experiment is successful? So, in this instance, the overall metric we're going to use to track the effectiveness of the change or the experiment is the appointment booking rate. But then each of these little things has its own metric. So this metric here, this big metric, is made up of little metrics. So we would have the gatekeeper bypass rate, which means if I call 100 businesses and speak to 100 gatekeepers, and a gatekeeper is like a receptionist or someone that's not the decision maker that I need to get past to obviously pitch. If I call 100 of them and I speak to 100 gatekeepers and I manage to get through to 20 decision makers, then my gatekeeper bypassing rate is 20%. And then we have the hook rate. So, your pitch rate is basically once you get through to a decision maker, how often are you able to pitch them? Because you need to say to them, look, I'm calling you, I'm trying to sell you something here. Like, can I pitch you this? So if we speak to 10 decision makers or 100 decision makers, and we try and hook them and we speak to 15, then our pitch rate is 15%. And then we have our conversion rate, which basically measures of the people that we pitched, how many of them did we convert into an appointment? Now, this is a very specific example. I know I keep repeating myself here, but in Easy Grow, this is covered in so much more detail. This is such a high, I can't even begin to explain how high level this is for acquisition, but you get the point. Metrics are made up of little metrics, which make up bigger metrics, blah, blah, blah. And then what we want to do is we want to establish the key performance indicator for each of these levels. So for example, in the cold calling section in Easy Grow, we establish the KPIs for each stage of the cold calling process so that when you're experimenting, you know specifically what to go between. And so once we've established the metrics and the KPIs we're going to use to measure them, we need to establish the sample size. So how many times are you going to test these variables? Like if you're stringing together this chain and you're going to build your own gatekeeper process, you're going to build your own hook and build your own pitch, therefore you've built your hypothesis, like how many times are we going to test these three variables? Well, in this instance, we try making 1,000 cold calls. This is a higher sample, so more test validity. Then we need to establish the latency and time frame. So how long will you run the test for and hit your sample size? 1.5 is make the test airtight. So then you ask yourself, what could possibly interfere with this test and skew the results at no fault of the variables? So airtight is a kind of a scientific term. Like if you've got like a Petri dish, if you're running an experiment on like a dish of bacteria, you need to make sure that dish is airtight. Because if there's any airborne bacteria or airborne minerals or water that can get into the experiment, it can fuck with the experiment and mess the result up. And the whole point of the scientific method is just to try and find the effectiveness of one variable. And so if you introduce a variable to a Petri dish, but then you've left the lid off, and then now there's all these things coming into it, it's going to mess the experiment up. Funnily enough, that's actually how penicillin was literally discovered. So big up Joseph for that, but whatever. Anyway, so for example, with our cold calling thing, something that could mess with the results is making cold calls during Christmas. If we try and run the cold calling experiment during a time that no one's at work, then we're going to get bad results. Or let's say that we have a really bad internet connection or a bad phone connection. We're not going to sound professional and people aren't going to understand us. And this is just another variable that needs to be accounted for. So before you run an experiment, make it airtight. 1.6 is create your version variables. So now that you've lined up your chain of variables, you actually need to create your hypothesis. So you create your variables to establish your hypothesis. So for example, we've got version 1 of our gatekeeper process, we've got version 1 of our hook, and we've got version 1 of our pitch. And this overall makes version 1 of our cold calling process. This is now our hypothesis, okay? And so we've got our hypothesis V1. Next, you establish the constants and the key variable. So now you define your constants, and these are part of the system, or part of the experiment rather, that directly or indirectly affect the ability of the variable, to perform its function. And they must be held constant while it's running. So what this means is when you've got these things that you're looking to test, everything else in the experiment must be the same. So let's say that you make your first 500 calls with a USA number, with a USA phone number, but then you make your next 500 calls with a UK phone number. And then let's say there's a difference between those two things. You no longer know now whether the change was because of the change to your key variables or because you changed your phone number. So for example, in cold calling, every call you must have the same tone of voice. You must have the same speech pacing, which is basically how quickly you talk. You've got to use the same lead sourcing techniques. You've got to use the same of everything, basically. You've got to call at the same time of the day, because if during this experiment, 20% of the time you're calling at 3 p.m., 50% of the time you're calling at 7 p.m., and then 10% you're calling at 9 a.m., whatever. Like these things are variables, and the time of day you call is going to impact the experiment in some way, shape, or form. And the problem is that if you vary anything else other than the one thing that you're trying to test, you no longer know what caused the result to happen. And so basically, ask yourself, what could influence the outcome of this experiment other than the variables? So, different tonality, etc., etc. And this is called ceteris paribus. So ceteris paribus is an incredibly important idea, and it's Latin for all other things staying the same except for one. And ceteris paribus is the fundamental foundation of the scientific method. Because the thing is when you're running an experiment, you can only test one thing at a time. One key variable can be changed at a time. Everything else must be held constant and the same. If you try testing two things at once and you observe a change, then you have absolutely no idea what brought that change on, so you can only test one variable at a time. What we're trying to do with experimentation and iteration in the scientific method is we're trying to determine cause and effect. And if you change multiple causes and you get a different effect, you no longer know what caused that effect, which means that you can't make accurate decisions and you're going to confuse yourself. So step 2 is to test the hypothesis. So, you've got your version 1, let it run. Step 2.2 is do nothing. So whilst the test is running, do not fuck with the test. Don't make any changes. You're going to have every emotional impulse under the sun to fuck around with it, but don't. Let it run. Decide how many you're going to do and then run it. Remember, we're just here to experiment. We're not here to try and build a business or be successful. We're just trying to run experiments. Obviously, you want to build a business to be successful, but the way you do that is by unemotionally running experiments. The one enemy of science is emotion. And if you bring emotion and impulse and change into your experiments, like if you get 500 cold calls in and then you find a fucking video on TikTok, because you're an idiot and you're on TikTok, and then you find like, oh, on TikTok, I saw this guy say this thing, so I'm going to change this. No. Ceteris paribus. Iron mind. No emotion, no impulse, no change. One variable at a time. Be patient. Step 2.3 is log the data. So what's going to happen as you run the test is you're going to start to observe data. So you want to observe what's happening and keep a daily log of the data in a spreadsheet. So for example, I borrowed this from EasyGrow. This is the cold calling metrics spreadsheet that we use. And so what this allows you to do every day is log down like how many calls have you made, how many DMs have you pitched. If you're testing your gatekeeper script, you're going to log in like how many people have picked up, how many gatekeepers have answered, etc., etc. And you've got all of these things that you're going to log every single day to measure the effectiveness of the cold calling system. And you need to log your data every day because the only point of doing the scientific method is getting data. The whole reason we do this is actually just to get data so we can make better decisions. Building a business and becoming successful is about making the right decision consecutively over and over again. And the only way to make the right decision is to know it's the right decision. And the only way to know it's the right decision is by looking at data. Data and numbers will tell you what is right and what is wrong. And so this is why we do this. We're not doing this for any other reason than knowing what the right decision is every time. And the only way we know it's right is by testing an accurate, empirical, statistical observation, which is why you must log your metrics every time, okay? And I've got metrics, in all of these folders up here. All of these are basically just metric folders, that tell me different things about my business. So step 3 is observe results. So the next thing to do in 3.1 is verify the data. So before you make any decisions, just check your data and make sure that you've logged it properly and it's accurate and there's no anomalies. There might be anomalies, but make sure that they're not of your own fault. Step 3.2 is determine success. So then what we're doing is we're sort of coming back to this diagram here and we're asking ourselves, we've got our baseline, which is where we were when we started the experiment. So was the experiment successful? Did this experiment deliver results within KPI? Did you progress away from baseline towards goal, or did you regress away from baseline towards hell? And so, every experiment has an outcome, and the outcome can be measured on this nice little abstract diagram here. That's basically, how you know if you're doing the right thing or not. And then step 4 is iterating hypothesis. So once we've built a hypothesis, right, like this, and then gone out to test it and gather the data and observe the results and make sure they're good, well, now we can iterate the hypothesis. So, the step 4.1 is to redefine key variables. So if appropriate, you may need to run more experiments to find KPI, to get into that point of success or to hit that goal. And if so, then you renote your key variables and the result they delivered. So for example, if I know that gatekeeper process V1, hook V1, and pitch V1 delivered an appointment booking rate of, let's say, 2%, then we've established empirically in our market, at this moment in time, in our environment, that this collection of variables delivers on average a 2% appointment booking rate. Okay, do you have any idea how big that is to understand? You now have an advantage. You now know that something works in a certain way. And if you do this hundreds of times, you're going to know hundreds of things that work. And so what you need to do now is recognize, okay, well, appointment booking rate of 2% might not be what we want. So the next thing to do is to pick the needle mover variable, because we're going to run another experiment, because we want this ABR to be like 5%. So if we want to get to 5%, then we need to iterate away from this and try and improve it. So the next experiment is to pick the needle mover variable. So to improve our appointment booking rate, you need to decide which variable you want to test. So now we're no longer going to be testing all three at once. We're just going to be testing one at a time. So let me explain. So remember, you can only test one thing at a time. So after you've done your original version 1 test, you can now only test one variable at a time. So you need to now decide logically which variable, if changed in the right way, is going to have the biggest impact. So for example, with these metrics here, in your last experiment, you might have really nailed the gatekeeper process. Maybe you get through the decision maker all the time. You also might have no trouble hooking decision makers and getting to the pitch. So the data will tell you, because if your gatekeeper bypassing rate is like 95% and your pitch rate is like 92%, but your appointment booking rate is 2%, then you know there's no problem with your gatekeeper process and no problem with your hook. So you want to get metrics and measure metrics for each stage of these processes, and then that way you know exactly where you're going right and where you're going wrong. And so what we would do in this case, if your gatekeeper process was in KPI and your hook process was in KPI, then you would iterate the pitch variable, because you can get through the decision maker and you can pitch them real easy, but the problem is actually saying the right thing to get them to convert. And so here we would edit the pitch, right? So step 4.3 is to recognize these new constants. So once you've decided the needle mover variable, the other two variables in this instance, or the other variables that you were experimenting with before, they now become constants in the next experiment. You cannot change them. If you want to fairly assess the impact of the needle mover variable, remember, ceteris paribus, you can only iterate one variable at a time. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to show this in a second here, is we're going to keep version 1 of Gatekeeper. We're going to keep version 1 of Script, but we're going to change the pitch. And so, by changing the pitch to version 2, we now have the cold calling process version 2, which we can now run the experiment again with another 1,000 dials. And once we've done 1,000 dials, we can look at the test and say, oh, maybe our appointment booking rate has gone to 3.7%. It's moved up. Or maybe it's gone down to 0.7%. It's moved down. So we come back to version 1 and we experiment again, right? But in order to make the change, you need to pick your modification level. So when you're modifying your needle moving variable, you need to decide how much. So you either modify it slightly. So if the result of the first experiment is kind of okay and kind of in line with the goal, then you're only going to slightly modify the thing, because you don't want to change it completely because you're nearly there. If it's kind of off, then you do moderate modification, which means the next version has some affinity. It's somewhat similar to the existing version. But if you completely botch the experiment, if version 1 is completely off, and your appointment booking rate is like 0.3%, even though your gatekeeper rate and your hook rate was fine, then you're going to do complete modification, which means that the next version that you create of this needle moving variable has absolutely no affinity to the existing version, right? So affinity just means similar to, right? So you can modify at 3 different levels. And knowing what type of modification to pick just depends on how far away you are from KPI off of the first experiment. And so 4.5, using this modification technique, is recreate your version 2 hypothesis. So we hold the original variables, except from the one we want to change, constant, which means that we make no changes. We change one thing, and then we've got our version 2. And then step 4.6 is repeat step 1. So then we come all the way back to step 1, where we formulate our hypothesis, and then we just run the experiment again.
Okay.
And this is...
I'm officially done with... Oh, flip. Where was I?
This has been a bit of a mission. Twice. Macro versus micro. Less than need. I'm responsible for you guys because then you need to have the right information. Without variation, entire concern ourselves with that. Basically, just means that you've got similar to absolutely no affinity to the existing version, right? So
I'm now done with the flowers. Well, not done with them, but they're all on their little sticks now, which is cool. But now I need to do like the outer like petal things to them, which is gonna be like a pain in the ass. But oh well, that's what I signed up to. So yeah. Oh my lord, I have. How many is this? I'm not gonna do 50, I don't think. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Yeah, so I have 17 little flower things. But yeah, these take god awfully long to make. But yeah. What's it gonna do? What was I gonna do? Oh yeah, I remember. I'm gonna turn off the glue gun now. I'm gonna get a banana really quick as well. I'm gonna take my blue light glasses off now because they're starting to like hurt the side of my head. Oh, I'll be back in a sec. Okay.
Affinity just means similar to, right? So you can
Bro, these flowers are so long to make. This probably sounds really bad. I'm whining about making my girlfriend flowers. This is poor. I'm sorry. Okay. Wait, no, never mind. Okay, let's carry on.
modify at 3 different levels. And knowing what type of modification to pick just depends on how far away you are from KPI off of the first experiment. And so 4.5, using this modification technique, is recreate your version 2 hypothesis. So we hold the original variables, except from the one we want to change, constant, which means that we make no changes. We change one thing, and then we've got our version 2. And then step 4.6 is repeat step 1. So then we come all the way back to step 1, where we formulate our hypothesis, and then we just run the experiment again. And this is where this sort of cyclical thing, it comes in cyclically. So we created the hypothesis, we tested it over 1,000 calls, we observed the results, we got 2% ABR, and then we've iterated our hypothesis to create version 2. And now we've this is all of the same thing. So we need to test it again, observe and iterate and keep going. And we cycle around. And after doing this, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, we'll find a cold calling script or a cold calling process that just works. Or you could buy EasyGrow, but I'm giving you the tools you need in case you don't want to, right? So you basically take your new hypothesis and run it through the same test that you ran version 1 through. Now remember that you must follow all 6 of the rules laid out at the start of step 3 before drawing conclusions. So, make sure that you've got a good sample size, you've accounted for latency, which basically just means that, you're accounting for any delays. But actually this is kind of latencies and more advanced we won't worry about that. We won't concern ourselves with that. Don't worry about it, basically. It's only for much more complicated experiments at a significantly higher level of business. So don't worry. Make sure you've got all these things in a row. And this is basically how you build everything in your business. This is the scientific method. Now, people kind of get this. You might have heard gurus before who talk about A/B split tests, where they're like, oh yeah, just split test it, bro. They're all on the right track because that's kind of a scientific test. But this is an A/B split test on steroids. And this is how you really should think. So anytime someone just says they need to do an A/B split test, it can sometimes be appropriate, but you need to kind of do your A/B split tests thoroughly and like this, okay? So if you follow all 18 of these steps, and there's 18 of these steps, I thought there was only 14 or 13. I made this document a while ago. If you follow all 18 of these steps properly, you literally cannot fail. And I mean this in every sense of the word. The only variable is time. You just need to give the scientific method enough time to work and shuffle variables. It will take time, but it will work. If you actually follow the scientific method, if you actually do this cyclical thing, you cannot fail. For as long as you keep trying, you can't fail anyway, by definition. But this is how you find anything that works. Unless you get really lucky, then you've got to do the scientific method. And I'm sure you don't want to rely on luck as a strategy in business, because it's a pretty bad one. So that's the scientific method, business edition. And you can also open up a summary of all the steps here, and you can observe them. That shouldn't be there. And you can observe them here, okay? So we'll just get rid of this. And then you've got the summary. So you can see all of the steps to the scientific method in a nice, neat little order here. Okay. Now, the last thing we're going to look at is variation. So we've kind of covered variation. Once again, this is a topic that in EasyGrow is just there's a whole thing on it, but I'm just going to cover it quickly here because you need to know it. So as you should recall from earlier, information is the bedrock of a business. It is used to change level 3 variables that in turn have a major impact on the business as a whole. The quality of the information that you have determines the quality of your business. Now, variation of information is the key to this whole thing. So in the same way that if a spider lays eggs and if it hatches 500 spiderlings, all of those spiderlings will be slightly different to, basically account for the change in environment. This is because your environment, sorry, I'm going to start this bit again. Variation of information is the key to the whole thing. It's been a long video. This is because your experiments can only be as good as the information informing them. So this is a really important thing. A good scientist is only a good scientist because they know what to test, right? Now, obviously, we can remove the emotion and do the empirical experiments and stuff, but you need to have the right information. Without variation, entire species will die and businesses will fail. This is why most people suck at business, by the way. Like, this is why most people why most of these sort of startup business online courses and videos do not help. So I'm sure you've done this before or seen this before where, some guru is selling like a course and, it kind of sucks and no one really gets results, and it's because there's no variation. Like everyone has the same thing. It's like, they say like, I'll just sell this one thing on Amazon, or like, this is the best drop shipping product to sell. And then everyone does it, and then it's no longer the best thing to sell because there's no variation, right? And this is how we die. So this is why I've not given you the best niche or the best service, because then everyone would copy it and there would be no variation, and as a species we would die. And I'm responsible for you guys, so I don't want you to die, right? At least in a business sense, or not personally, of course. Although I don't know you, I would rather you didn't die, right? So anyway, like, I'm not biasing you towards a niche or a service in any way. This is going to be the same thing when we come to the cold email and the cold calling and the cold DM and the content processes. Like, I'm not going to give you like, say exactly this, because if you do that, it won't work because everyone will do it. Now in Easy Grow, we do that because in Easy Grow, there's only like 1,000 people, or like it's a much more elite group. But with the size of this community, as I'm sure you've observed, if I unleash like a new cold email like template, everyone's going to use it and it's going to stop working. So I can do that in Easy Grow, which is why we do, because there's less people using it. But at this level, not going to happen. But I'm still going to give you the best training that you're ever going to find at this level for acquisition. Don't worry about that. But my point here is we're going to go through principles, we're going to go through ideas, we're going to go through how to do it, not just do this, because you can't copy and paste your way to success. You can if you're the only person copying and pasting, but the second that like more than one person does, it doesn't work. So variation is the key to evolutionary success. It's the random mutation of genes that has brought about humans, owls, willow trees, and all successful species we know today. This program will give you the variables you need to succeed, but I implore you to introduce your own calculated and random variation. So there are countless combinations of variables that we can combine to test, and there is no end to variation. You can have as much fun as you want with it, and you can apply almost anything to business to see if it works. My best systems that I've ever made have not been copy and pasted. They are the result of relentless iteration of random variables. Now, this is kind of a key word here, is this word randomness, because this is how nature does it. Like, nature's only tool for variation is randomness. So you know how on that game show, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you get to phone a friend. If you're not sure what to do, you phone a friend. Well, when it comes to client acquisition or business, I'll put business here specifically, when it comes to business, that friend is randomness. So if you're ever stuck in a corner or snookered or trying to build a business system, try randomness. I'm not even joking. Turn to a random page in a random book, pick a random line, and see how you can apply it to your business. Learn from nature, because you never know what you're going to discover. Like, you want to become this mad scientist, basically, and you want to become random and somewhat unpredictable. Like, if I'm building a new, if I'm making like a YouTube video and I'm trying to think of like a hook for a YouTube video, like, I'm not even joking. Sometimes if I'm not sure what to say in the hook, I'll just go to my library, pick out a random book, a random page, shut my eyes, point at one word, and I'll see if I can build the hook around that word. And it works. Like, because if you're using randomness and you're really truly experiencing variation in your business, then no one's going to be like you. A lot of the time it won't work. And this is why, in nature, like, most of the variants are not preferable. Like, most information you find for your business will not be good, and most of it will suck. But sometimes you'll come across something that just changes the game completely, and the only way you're going to do that is by just trying things that are random. Now, not completely random, obviously they have to make sense, but I'm hoping you can get the point. I hope you can understand. So variation is the key of evolution, and once you understand that and you use it, you'll crush everyone. So just to sort of summarize this video in a sentence or two, maybe I could have saved you the time, but I think giving you the context and the full understanding was important. You know this phrase of, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again? Well, that's for idiots. Because if you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result, then you're insane. And that's not the definition of insanity, but a popularized one. Like, if you try something and it doesn't work and you try it again, it's not going to work again. You must shuffle variables and you must have variation. So if at first you don't succeed, iterate and then try and try again. Okay?
Fellas, I think we gotta write that one down. I'll be real. It's one for the history books on Charlie Morgan's part. Fair play to him. That's a good one. Okay, and I've just Let me grab my notepad. Okay. Okie dokie.
This line here is bullshit. Because if you do something and it doesn't work and you do it again, it's not going to work again. But if you do something and it doesn't work, you look at why it didn't work, you look at the feedback, and then you iterate what you did, and then you try that new thing, then it might work. Okay? That's the lesson of this video. So in this video, we've gone through the iteration explained. We've gone through iteration explained. We've gone through meta-long evolution, DNA, applied evolutionary biology. We've been through the scientific method twice. We kind of went through that twice. Macro versus micro iteration, iterating towards goal, measuring experimental outcomes, metrics, variation, asymmetry in a scientific method. We've been through this. This has been a bit of a mission. This video has taken me nearly 3 weeks to make, to be completely honest with you. And I hope that it serves you well. And I hope that, you've taken what you need to know from this. And I implore you to just rewatch this thing, because this really is the secret. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.
Okay. That is 1.7 over and done with. Business setup. Wait, what was that?
Blah blah consulting.com. Hey everyone, Charlie Morgan here, and welcome to Business Setup. So in this video, I will be walking you through 11 very simple and straightforward steps to setting up your business in terms of legality, financially, and basically getting you set up so that you actually have something tangible and real to sort of trade out of. Now, be under no illusion, we've been setting up your business the whole time, and the niche selection, the offer creation, the problem selection, the solution validation, all of those things are the core foundations. This is kind of just the dressing that we have to do to seem legitimate and actually have a entity and bank account and payment processor and all those things to make us look legitimate, transparent and tangible. So we're going to be naming your business, registering your domain, setting up your business email, legal documents, templates, company logo, website setup, professional LinkedIn setup, registering your company, banking setup, payment processing setup, and software stack setup. So we're really going to get into some practical action items here. And without further ado, let's have a look. So welcome to Business Setup. This resource will cover the fundamentals of making your business look and feel tangible so that clients actually trust you. This is nowhere near as complicated or time consuming as you may think. So let's get into it and set up our business from a legal and financial standpoint so you can move on to start trading and making some money. So again, we're not really going to be trying to get clients until week 5 here because we've got
That's week 5. Oh.
A lot of work to do, but it's very important that your business is set up properly before clients start rolling in and you start making money. Okay, so there's 11 steps before you can move on to the mindset training in week 2. So first of all, we've got to name the company. Very simple. Register the domain, and let's get into these things. So first of all, naming your business. So a lot of people spend way too much time on the name. So what I want you to do is set a timer on your phone or on your computer for 20 minutes, sorry, not 20, 10 minutes. And I want you to come up with a name for your company. And basically what you want to do is come up with a name, and you want to go here to namecheap.com.
Human behavior. Influence. Holy hell. Damn. What's like the most expensive? Wait, what? What if it's .com? What? Hello?
To see if that company can be named accordingly. Okay, so for example, if I wanted to call my company Imperium and just Imperium, then I could go imperium.com and search, and if the domain is not available, which it's not, it's taken, then I'm not going to choose that name, because we kind of just want to have a .com domain. But if I wanted to go with, like, let's say I wanted to call my company blah blah consulting.com, then that's probably going to be available. Okay, and so that would be a name that you could use. Now, I'm not actually going to say that you use blah blah consulting.com, but you got my point. So basically, it's really this simple. The biggest companies in the world didn't care about the name. So Apple is named after a fruit, Amazon is named after a rainforest, and Google is named after something that a literal baby would say. Like Google is like goo goo gaga shit, right? So our company name Imperium was a random idea my business partner's mother had when we were trying to think of a name. I remember at the time I was playing like Call of Duty Zombies or something, and we were like, oh yeah, Imperium sounds good. And then we were like, yeah, let's roll with it. Thought, yeah, that sounds kind of cool. It doesn't matter. You can use ChatGPT to your heart's content here. Truly, the name doesn't matter. Okay, it does not matter. As long as you don't call it like don'tbuyfromme.com, it doesn't matter. So set a timer, 10 minutes, no more. Do it now. Maybe you've got a name in mind already. It should be that simple.
Just name a color like orange, blue, red. I'm joking. Don't know. Hmm. Hmm. Mm. What's something about my like I don't like stutter over. Something I can say quite easily. I don't know, like behaviorists. Behaviorists. No, I don't like that. Fuck it, I use ChatGPT then.
I don't. You can.
Need to turn on memory to access your year of... What is this? You built brands with precision and flair. You turn concrete backgrounds into air. Okay. Hey, I'm gonna write that shit down somewhere. Wait, let me go back. That's sick. Three big themes of 2025: building and branding your store. Yeah. Balancing growth and routine. Okay. My chat style. What is this? If 2025 gave out awards, you'd get the side hustle scorer. The navigator. 22% of users share this archetype. Hell yeah. Oh, hell yeah. Wow. Thanks for chatting this year across all the drafts, questions and rabbit holes. You found a place to work things out, and that's no small thing. Whatever 2026 brings, we'll chat about it. Hell yeah. Cool stuff. Hmm. Okay, some of these names are a bit goofy. I can't lie. I can't even signal and form. I gotta show you some of these, man. These they're goofy, bro. What? He, I clear frame advisory. Why are these all advisory? Category 2. Human layer, yeah. Neuroframe. Mindset mechanics. Cognitive edge is quite cool. Human layer is quite cool. Mindset mechanics is quite cool. Nova. I feel like Nova's already a brand. Nova AI. Give me one name you think fits best. Cognitive edge, that's the one. Yeah, right. Cognitive edge. Okay. Please don't be £10 billion. Oh, it's taken. What is cognitive edge then? Hold on. Name's already taken, man. Clear form, mind frame, signal and sense. Give me one. Right, clear form it is. Please don't be taken. Clear edge, maybe? Hold on. Now we're cooking. Oh, fuck, it's so expensive. Jesus Christ. Mm. Uh. Bro, this shouldn't be this hard. Just think of one. Um. Form an edge, maybe? Former. Yeah, but when we don't create. Former forge, maybe? Fuck. Forge. Former. Clear. Forge. Clear fog. Oh. Mm. Shall we might have to go with the influence lab. Oh, I don't like it though, it's corny. Bro, what have these all taken for? This is like Rage bait. These are all flipping taken. Okay. Psych works. Let's try. Yeah, nice. I can have it for 1,000 a year. Or was that 1,000 a month? Oh god. Curious. Oh my lord. Mind glue. Oh my god. Oh, I got one. Cognitive cave. Okay. Cognitive cave. Alright. I feel like, should it be one word? Mm. All of Charlie's ones that he had were like one word. Alright, well, I got one now, so.
Go to some Latin words, just make sure that it's easy to spell and the domain is available. Okay, simple, done, dusted. Second thing is domain and email setup. So what you want to do is you want to head over to Google Workspace, and you can do that here. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to use Google Workspace to register your domain, and we're also going to use it to set up your company email. Okay, so I'm not going to give you step-by-step instructions on the screen because this is Google and it is incredibly simple to do this. And I'm just going to remove these capital letters before they annoy me. But the point I'm making is like you don't need step-by-step instructions to set up a bloody Workspace account because it's so simple. So I'll just run you through it real quick. So head over to Workspace, you can find that here. Put in your name and current email to create a Workspace account.
I'll be back in a sec. Hey chat, we might have to leave the stream here for now, but I'll try restream later. Just some things just came up, but I do apologize, but yeah.